How is everyone? So I recently read Malibu Rising. How well is that showing up? Ta-da! By Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I loved it. It was so good. And today I wanted to do a little review of that. The first half of this video will be spoiler free, so if you haven't read the book, it's okay. And I will let you know when I'm about to move into the spoiler-filled section of the video so that if you haven't read the book and you don't want any spoilers, you can click away then. So the basic premise of the book is that it follows a family made famous by Mick Riva, who is a famous singer, and he marries June, and then together they have 4 kids, and the entire book encompasses basically their somewhat dysfunctional family dynamic. And the book follows the perspective of the 6 main characters, Mick, June, Nina, Jay, Hud, and Kat. I think that's everybody. Kit. Ooh, it's Kit. And we get to read the story from all of their perspectives, with their different talents and dreams and aspirations. So the setting flips back and forth between the beginning of the family with Mick and June first meeting and falling in love and getting married and starting a family, and their 4 children's lives in the current day, which is in the 80s, and how this got them here. And basically in the present day, it all takes place over the span of 24 hours on a day where Nina is having her annual big party, and basically anybody who's anybody comes, and anybody who knows their address comes as well. So it's a big thing. And we occasionally get to hear from the perspectives of people outside of the main 6, which helps to kind of inform the story a little bit more. And being able to see some of the other characters' point of views adds another layer of complexity to the story, of how one character can be thinking and feeling one way, and a person that is in the scene with them can be thinking and feeling a completely different way, and because of that, the scene doesn't go the way one or the other thought it would. And it makes these really interesting dynamics between the characters all that more interesting to watch. All in all, the story was very fast-paced. If you're looking for a good beach read, this is definitely it. And the writing does a very good job of making you feel like you are right alongside the characters the whole time, so you can really just sink into the book. And all in all, it's just a really great fast-paced book about family dynamics and what goes on behind closed doors, and leaves you with the message that family is whatever you make it. Now I'm going to be moving on to the spoiler-filled section, so if you don't want any spoilers, click away now. Okay, so thankful to those of you who have stayed this far, because, ooh, this is the most exciting part. So at the beginning of the story, we find out within just the first couple of pages that at the end of the book, the house is inevitably going to burn down. And throughout the story, we see all of these little instances of fire being brought into the picture, and it's always in a really negative connotation. So one of these instances is when June is drunk and she's smoking a cigarette, and she reaches out with the cigarette in her hand to pet Kit's head. And there's another instance when Carrie is yelling at Brandon for leaving her and just generally being okay, and just generally being not a great guy. And she's throwing all of his clothes onto the front lawn and threatening to burn them. So all of these events are surrounded by this really negative, very scary connotation that really builds up the anxiety of the plot, but it never ends with anything. It never ends with anything actually burning down. But at the end of the story, when the house actually does burn down, it's one, through a very simple action of just a cigarette falling on the ground. And 2, it's come at a time in the story when everybody has come to peace with everything that has happened and with the way that they want their lives to move forward. And the house burning down just kind of signifies this very clear line that has now been crossed, that they were unhappy with the situation that their parents had left them in, and now they've decided they're going to live their lives that they actually want to live. And they're going to let go of their past and move on from there. And Nina's house burning down is just a huge symbol of that, especially in the case of Nina, who has finally gotten up the courage to do something that actually makes her happy instead of other people, and she's leaving her husband and the house that he wanted, that she never liked, and it's burning down and she never has to see it again, and she never has to go back to this life that she never wanted in the first place. And I think it was really interesting that the last action of Mick in the book, even though He's done all of these horrible things to his family, cheated on his wife, I don't even know how many times, divorced her, left her multiple times, had kids with other people, drank, smoked, all of that. Just generally not a great person. And the last action that he does is something that leaves his children feeling free. Free from him, free from the life that he originally created for them, free from all the burdens of their past, so that they are able to move on. I also like the idea of these reoccurring patterns in this book, of June wanting something that's much bigger and grander than she already has, and she doesn't want to end up working in the same restaurant that her parents worked in. But not only does she end up working in that restaurant later on, but Nina ends up working in that restaurant as well. And Nina, instead of having this large, big, glamorous life where she's making a bunch of money for her siblings because she has to, she's their guardian at this point, she wants something simpler. And watching the struggle back to back between Nina and June and the lives that they wish they led that they can't is really interesting, especially when you see June's outcome and you're hoping and praying through the whole book that Nina doesn't end up like that and that she finally realizes what she has to do to actually make herself happy. And it's really nice that at the end she finally realizes that, figures it out, and goes out and gets it. So overall, definitely loved this book. I gave it 4 stars. I did toss back and forth between, do I want to give it 5 stars or 4 stars? And while it was a really great book, and definitely a really great palate cleanser after reading The Maidens, which if you haven't seen that video, you can go watch me rant about that. But I don't know that it was like God tier book of like, this is hands down one of the best books I've ever read, because I've read a lot of really good books, and I can't quite say it's a 5-star book, but it was so good and it was so fun to read, and I definitely highly recommend for those of you that haven't read it. And if you have read it, let me hear about it in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. All right, bye everyone.